Having received multiple Game of the Year award nominations following its 2023 release, I decided to try out Remedy's Alan Wake 2 game recently, and am pleased to say that my experience was generally positive. As a disclaimer, I am a first-timer to the Alan Wake series, so my opinions here don't take into account any comparisons with the original game from 2010. Alan Wake 2 continues in the survival horror genre, following the story of novelist Alan Wake, who has spent over the past decade trapped in an alternate dimension known as the Dark Place. Despite his attempts to escape by writing new stories that alter reality, his efforts have been thwarted by a dark presence which manifests itself as his evil doppelganger. In the meantime, two FBI agents arrive in town to investigate reports of ritual murders linked to a cult, which eventually leads them face to face with Alan Wake himself, who has mysteriously washed ashore in a nearby lake. After putting the pieces together that they too are a part of Alan's story, they set out on a mission to locate an artifact which has the power to control the alternate dimension and set the story straight once and for all. Much like Control, Alan Wake 2 is also powered by Remedy's own Northlight engine, and dare I say, this title ranks as one of the best looking games of this generation. From the highly detailed human models and faces to their realistic motion capture animations, and even further to the usage of global illumination and other lighting techniques to set the tone and atmosphere of the environments, this game is absolutely visually stunning. Throughout Alan Wake 2, I encountered many dark twists and turns as the story unfolded, which left me genuinely surprised. I found that the graphical fidelity of the game also made a major impact on these experiences, as at times the narrative is experienced via in-game real-time conversations with NPCs, cinematic shorts interspersed between gameplay, and even live-action depictions. The fact that the game does look as good as it does really helps to raise the bar in terms of immersion and presentation. However, there were times that I felt the game was being a bit too heavy-handed with its sort of meta approach to the player being both the reader and the writer of the story, including a feeling that the game was running a bit too long towards the latter third. However, ultimately these observations only subtracted from my experience, rather than completely ruining it. For the first few hours of the game, you'll be playing as one of the FBI agents, performing a lot of exploration and detective work around the game's early locations. Here, you're introduced to the Mind Place, an internal space of the agent's mind which serves as a visual representation of her thoughts. Here you will primarily manage the case board, in which you pin various clues together across the cases you're investigating in an effort to solve them. While I did find this mechanic neat from a creative perspective early on in the game, by mid-game I eventually grew a bit fatigued from managing and lining up all the clues I had encountered. Granted, technically you only need to perform this at key points to reveal clues that will progress the story. However, I would have preferred some other implementation of doing so. On the other hand, this aspect is a bit better with Alan Wake, who will open up as a playable character a few hours into the game, with the option to switch back and forth between his storyline and the agent's. Given he's a writer, with Alan you're introduced instead to the writer's room, an internal space where you can visualize and rewrite plot details of his novel to manipulate the physical environment. Compared to the agent's case board, I enjoyed this mechanic a lot more for a number of reasons. The game alerts you with a visual indicator of areas that can be altered, so there's less guessing involved. Applying the story rewrites is far more quick and straightforward, and this mechanic directly impacts the environment you're playing in, so it felt more interactive. To say it in another way, the agent's case board to me is more of a narrative mechanic, whereas Alan's writer's room is more of a gameplay mechanic. Combat here is just serviceable. The game uses lighting as a combat mechanic in which you can apply a burst from your flashlight to weaken and stun certain enemies, so you can follow up with one of the various weapons at your disposal. There's also light puzzles that involve you locating light sources and transferring their light with other light sources to open up new paths. Again, I found these merely to be at a level that's just serviceable, but nowhere near exciting. In either case, your mileage may vary in terms of how much these hold your interest after several hours of runtime. Aside from the narrative and graphical chops of the game, the overall gameplay of Alan Wake 2, in my opinion, is not as up to par. In closing, overall I found Alan Wake 2 to be a good game. Whether it's an amazing or great game will depend on your own taste. Personally, I was most impressed by its graphical fidelity, atmosphere, presentation style, and its unfolding of plot events. Its combat, puzzles, mechanics, and overall environment traversal, on the other hand, were mildly interesting, but alone would not be sufficient to hold my attention. Hopefully, I will be satisfied in this regard in the near future, as fortunately, we can look forward to Remedy's highly anticipated Control Resonant, releasing this September. If this content has sparked your interest, or if you're a fan of the original Alan Wake, I recommend trying this one out, as despite my criticisms, I do believe there is an experience to be had here. Well, that's it for the video. As always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to be notified of when new videos release. And leave a comment letting me know what your thoughts were on Alan Wake 2. If you can't wait for a new video, feel free to check out my prior videos on this channel. See you in the next one.